We're in a constitutional crisis if we allow it.
Are we going to be okay?
Anthony Romero.
Anthony Romero.
It's Anthony D. Romero, Executive Director of the American Civil Liberties Union.
I don't own this organization. This is a rental car. My job is not to drive it into a ditch. If the ACLU did not exist, would this country be in worse shape? Hell yes.
But I'd love to hear a best case scenario, worst case scenario of what you're anticipating is ahead.
I think
I'm so excited about this conversation with Anthony Romero. Anthony has been the CEO of the ACLU for over 2 decades. And during that time, he has sued every sitting president. He is a force of nature. He's one of the toughest people you'll ever meet. And yet something that struck me about this interview is he was so kind and thoughtful. In person, he feels like this teddy bear, and yet knowing that he fights for a living. He fights for freedom and democracy every single day is really striking. I sat down with Anthony in the ACLU headquarters in New York City, and we talked about what is it like to do work that is forged in combat, where you are fighting every single day, many times for people and causes that you might not personally believe in. Ultimately, this is a conversation about how you stay focused on what really matters. How do you stay optimistic and energetic when your work is so existentially important, where you are literally fighting for democracy itself? Anthony Romero, welcome to the podcast.
It's my pleasure. Great to be with you.
You've been head of ACLU for 25 years?
24 years?
24 years. You're still very young. But
yeah,
24
years old. I'm an old man.
24 years. Man. That spans 4 presidents. From your vantage point and with this context, how do you interpret the moment we're in now? Does it feel different?
Yeah, there's nothing harder. It's massive in terms of the impact on civil liberties and civil rights. And this, unlike the war on terror that was more circumscribed to certain key areas, this is undoing kind of rights and liberties, rules and norms across the board. And so the impact is much greater and much more significant. And I also don't know where this ends. You know, in the first Trump administration, all I thought that we had to do is survive the first 4 years.
Make it through.
Get it through. And we'll see. And as soon as we get it through, that will be enough. Now it feels like America might be on a different path, a different inflection point.
Are we going to be okay?
Sure. It depends on...
I want more confidence, Anthony.
No, it depends on us, right?
Yeah.
People ask all the time, are we in a constitutional crisis or not? Like, we're in a constitutional crisis if we allow it. And we're not in a constitutional crisis if we resist it. A lot depends on us and our ability to do it. The ways in which the American people will show up. You know, we're filming or we're talking now in the aftermath of the Jimmy Kimmel controversy. And apparently he's going to go back on the air. I think that's a sign that when the public outcry is as strong as it was from Hollywood, from media, even from conservatives like Ted Cruz, that you can turn the tide. So in some ways, I'm more optimistic today because I'm riding the wave of what had been a good turnaround. But it all depends on us. It all depends on the American people and how we show up.
You mentioned Jimmy Kimmel. We are also dealing with the wake of the Charlie Kirk assassination.
Yeah.
What were you doing when you heard that news, and what went through your head?
The first impulse was to put out a statement to decry the violence and to exhort good folk to engage in the political discourse. And, you know, in some ways, I feel like my job is I'm a secular priest, if you will. I have a following, right? I have my 2 million members. You know, they're from all walks of life and all religions and no religions, but I feel like they look to leadership in moments, and so lead. That's what they've put me in the job for. That's my responsibility.
Is there anything that you do to stay level, to stay centered amidst the noise?
I mean, I think there's a personal practice of kind of meditation and prayer. There's a sense of trying to channel positivity and kindness. Act as if, even when you're not feeling positive, you act as if.
Fake it till you make it.
Do it. And do the next right thing. And, I think it's important that you, in the face of such mendacity and the violence, and in the face of such vitriol, remaining kind and engaged is an act of resistance, right? Because it's a way to kind of assert, like, I'm not going to let my humanity suffer as a result of this. And I'm going to recognize the humanity of all the people around me, even those I don't always agree with. And you're going to find the goodness in all. Enforcing that as a daily practice, looking for kind of moments of kindness on the street when New York is filled with it. It's just thinking through how people are engaging their world. I see T-shirts about, pro-Trump or pro-Elon T-shirts, and I'm like, wow, that takes a little bit of courage to wear a shirt like that in the middle of New York City. And I kind of flash them a smile. They probably think it means I'm kind of quietly kind of supporting them,
wink.
Right?
A little flash of red on your tie.
And it's just a little red. I always wear red.
If they only knew.
And I think it takes guts to kind of stand up for what you believe in. And so I kind of identify with that.
What do you think people get wrong about the moment that we're in right now?
I think there's much more in play. Not all is lost. I mean, that's one of the things I feel like I've been trying to do more consciously, especially among liberals and progressives and people who care about civil liberties and civil rights. I get it. Believe me, first thing I do is I wake up in the morning and I read, 3 newspapers, and I have ChatGPT give me the other clips. I have a question I ask it every morning.
What question?
What are the top civil liberties, civil rights issues that I need to know today? And ChatGPT gives me this beautiful kind of summary and a chart, both domestically, internationally. And in addition to my own press clip, my office also produces things for me. And I read the Wall Street Journal first, and then I read the New York Times, and I read Politico. 6 o'clock, it comes online, and it's usually the time I'm up and reading. But people are despondent in my world, and they feel like we're losing. And then I have to kind of remind them, like, no, we're not. We're winning a lot more than we're losing. Like, I look at the ACLU cases, for instance, we have 160 different legal actions against the Trump administration. Over 80 of them are class action lawsuits, big mama lawsuits. And even at the Supreme Court, we're winning about 66% of the time. At the lower court levels, we're winning even a lot more than the Supreme Court level. We're winning about 77% of the time at the Court of Appeals and almost 90% of the time in the district court levels. And sometimes, even when you lose, you win, right? There are a bunch of lawsuits that we and others have filed that have been, really the whole goal was to slow some of this down, right? So for instance, this whole immigration kind of effort, the deportation and the raids, we knew going in that there would not be one lawsuit that would stop the deportations or the raids. We knew that the government had the authority to remove people who were here in the country unlawfully. We knew that they would have both the power and increase their power, especially with this big, beautiful bill where they have $170 billion for immigration enforcement efforts. But a lot of it, we're just throwing sand in their machinery, right? And we're playing for time. And that's a lot. that is a lot for a lot of folk who can get their lives together. If they know they're ultimately going to get deported and they're going to get removed because there's not a constitutional challenge that we can bring, but you're actually able to give them some form of notice or due process, that allows people to wind up their affairs here in a responsible way. Some of the Alien Enemies Act litigation we're doing where, they might ultimately remove many of our clients. How they are removed is everything. Do you get a chance to figure out where you're going to place your kids if they're U.S. citizens? Do they stay with family members? Do they go back with you? Or do you get to a chance of selling off the car and taking some of the money with you? Or emptying out the bank accounts, selling the furniture, winding up one's life here in dignity, even as you're being deported, can make a difference in people's lives. So slowing it up is success in some instances. So I think we have to redefine the way that success is, even in a loss, can be significant. And then finally, I think part of this is also changing the public narrative and bringing the public along with you. Some of this, you're not going to win in one fell swoop and then it's done. You got to bring people on a journey so they understand what's going on and what's playing out. And even as it takes a while, and even if there are setbacks, the fact that you're bringing the public along with you, I think, is critically important. So I'm out there kind of evangelizing for not all is lost. There is hope. There's no constitutional crisis if we resist it. There is if you give up the ghost and just roll over. So it's on us more than it's on Trump or the courts or Chief Justice Roberts. It really gives us agency back.
Us being ACLU?
Us, I mean, the American people. The ACLU too, but us, the American people.
Hearing you talk about this work just reminds me how complex it is. I mean, the cases are complex. They're so woven with one another. I was talking with someone on your staff before we started around, one case isn't just an immigration case. It touches all these other aspects of our work. Winning is winning, but also losing can be winning. At the end of the day, how do you think about evaluating the efficacy of the ACLU and then also your role?
Second one's much harder, right? Look, I sleep well at night knowing that we are effective. That doesn't mean we win. That doesn't all the time. That doesn't mean that we don't make mistakes or screw up, which we do all the time. But so this is very simple. In law school, like the but-for exercise. If the ACLU did not exist, but for the ACLU, would this country be in worse shape? Hell yes, right? No brainer, right? And we do real assessments on what's working, what's not working. I'm not running a church in that way. I want to see throughputs. I want to know kind of what the outcomes are. The ROI, if you will. I'm not afraid of those metaphors and apply them in our work. Is it working? If it's not, we got to rethink. And so we try to have the kind of discipline with, and there's a little bit of internal resistance when I try to do that. The fact that I know my success rate of my lawsuits, comes at some consternation. My lawyers hate it when I say, okay, win, loss, draw. 3 categories. You got to put the lawsuit in one of the 3, and you got to walk me through why you think it's a win or a loss or a draw.
Because they think there's more nuance.
Complex.
It's complicated.
So complicated. I'm like,
I think you don't understand.
I don't. And I kind of say, I get it. You can give me the complications and the complexities. You're still going to have to put it for me in one of these kind of columns. I still want a number. And we have, plans, and we game them out. We think about a 2028 plan, a 2030 plan we're working on right now, different scenarios. We're looking at what this organization should look like in terms of positioning itself. If MAGA is kind of dominant all through 2030, whether there's an inflection point that we're able to kind of harvest a different type of kind of agenda. And we're thinking that all through.
And where do you think we're headed?
I think it's to be determined still. I don't know if I'm willing to game it out yet. I think it could be as much, we could go either way. I mean, I think Donald Trump has a unique kind of charismatic role as the center of his MAGA universe, which is really quite remarkable. I say that because he has a certain kind of center of gravity role in his party. Now, if he's not there, it's not clear to me who has the kind of ability to hold that all together, whether all their planets in MAGA world will still revolve around a new sun. I don't know. I somehow doubt it. At the same time, it's just not the aberration it was in 2017. Not about getting through 4 years. There's much more that's been done in this moment. And I think also one of the things that our world needs to do is we need to re-envision what this looks like. If we were to kind of have a moment when the country goes in a different direction, what do? You're not just going to build back the same old stuff you had before. Like, you're not going to go back and just put the sign of USAID over the same mantle on the doorway, right? You've got to think differently about what are you going to do to build U.S. soft power and hard power? What are you going to do to build rule of law? What are you going to do to make the Justice Department a robust, independent entity within the U.S. government? Can't just be, well, we'll get a new attorney general who's going to kind of reestablish the good old days. You got to rethink the whole thing. I actually think there will be a moment when we'll have to harvest the relationships with Republicans and conservatives. I actually believe that's part of the solution. It can't be a winner-take-all that progressives now get to do to the conservatives, what the conservatives and MAGA has done to progressives and liberals. No, there's got to be a very different moment. You got to bring people through this process. And that's why I think an organization like mine that is kind of clear values, but is not partisan, has to be able to do that and play that leadership role.
If you're open to it, I'd love to hear a best case scenario, worst case scenario of what you're anticipating is ahead.
So the best case scenario is that this moment has triggered a real reflection on what this country is all about, what defines us as a people, and that the efforts to undo the core values and some of the core norms trigger a kind of a recommitment, if you will. For instance, to have a moment when we recommit to, yes, a nation of immigrants. And yes, a nation that has a right to uphold its laws and to ensure and enforce its borders, but how it does so, and how it does so with humanity, with a sense of due process, with a sense of value of the divergence of kind of people coming from all shores, all nations, all creeds, all colors, all backgrounds. I think that you get to a moment when you have a very different type of conversation. I think you're seeing some of that play out. I think the deportations and the raids that have been so aggressive, the Stephen Miller agenda, I think it's not sitting well with some conservatives and Republicans. Certainly it's not sitting well with some business leaders in corporate America. And so I think we can harvest some of that. I think this whole question around allowing people to speak their minds and identify the way they wish, I think we're making real progress, even in these tough inflection points, like with the aftermath of the assassination of Charlie Kirk or the purging of Jimmy Kimmel and then the re-platforming of Jimmy Kimmel. I think it's an opportunity for us to kind of say, yes, this nation believes in divergent viewpoints, and we are the better for it. We are not. Attorney General Bondi is wrong when she goes after hate speech. Hate speech is protected speech. Protected speech is essential to the functioning of our democracy. And I think it's a teachable moment for conservatives and for liberals, because that's also been up for grabs among some liberals. And so I think in the best of times, this could be the precursor to this golden age of defining values, to defining norms, to re-envisioning what it means to be all equal under the law.
Because they're being tested.
Because they're being tested, and because some of what that was there at place has been wiped away. So then you'll have to necessarily think anew and afresh about what gets put in its place. And so I'm hopeful that we find some creative ways to kind of recommit to these core values. The worst case scenario is that we're in just the beginning of a long slog when the kind of encroachment on rights and liberties just continues to be a place where the government goes and where either private citizens get tired or corporate America gets co-opted. And certainly the co-optation of corporate America is already happening. Question is, how do we wake them up, throw a bucket of cold water on these folks and say, hey, you got to be more worried about what we stand for than the dividends and the market value and the market, fluctuations. I mean, those are important. The economy is important, but it's always bigger than that. So, whether or not we're in a kind of a downward slide where people's commitment to these values and people just get afraid or quiet or complacent or they disengage, that worries me.
So for folks who can't see the video, there's this massive map of the United States behind me.
Yeah.
And when I look at this, I see a bunch of states with different laws, different cultures, different norms. I see Ohio, my hometown. I'm curious, when you look at this map, what do you see?
I see opportunities for us. I mean, this is where maybe I'm just such an optimist. I actually see that, we have a staff in every single part of the country. We have a staff in every state. And I think there are real opportunities for us. I mean, I think there's ways for us to make our case. I mean, one of the things that's exciting about the work I do is that it's the market test of public opinion, right? If we cannot convince good, fair-minded Americans about the merits of our cause, then we've got to do something differently. And that's what we have to do. We have to try to bring people along. And I ultimately do believe that for the vast majority of people, they want to think of themselves as fair and just and kind and empathetic. Those are values that cut across kind of religions and races and creeds and colors. That's the way that people want to see themselves. No one wants to see themselves as a jerk or as a closed-minded bigot, right? They all want to think, I'm open-minded. So then, okay, I'm open-minded. So let me try to open that mind up a little bit further. And that's what our job is. It's not so hard for me to do the job I do in New York, right? And when I get recognized on the street, usually it's people want to say thank you or send me a postcard or give me words of encouragement. It's not so true in some of these other places where you're up against kind of harder kind of political dynamics. And so some of the folks who are doing this work in these places is really courageous work because they believe.
To that point, I remember asking my mom, what is the ACLU, when I was a kid? And she said, the ACLU is the last man standing. And in that is that, I love my mom too, she's great. In that is that the ACLU is by design in a point of friction. It is meant to be the last stand against assaults. What is it like for you and for the organization to continually be redirecting yourself towards friction when the human impulse is to move towards ease, to put yourself continually in the crosshairs?
I think I don't know if it's, I don't think it's especially courageous necessarily. I think it's just necessary. And because you see the potential for making the world a better place. And, it gets a little personal. I mean, I think at some level I've lived a life beyond my wildest dreams, right? And it's just, I've had a life that has just been blessed and every opportunity, right? And, sure, struggle in terms of working class folks. My parents neither one finished high school. I grew up in the public housing projects. I went to vocational high school. You would think it's a life of hardship. It has been a dream. It's because I have been given opportunities and chances, and I have been allowed to actualize, my greatest desires and be the person I want to be today, not the person I was born to be 60 years ago. And when I think about the kind of the alchemy of that change, and just like, wow, that's fucking amazing. Everybody should have that chance, right? That is what this is all about. It's like, it's not to make everyone be like me at the end of it. It's allow everyone to be who they want to be. And that's why this agenda is so brilliant. This agenda is such a calling. It's like, we decide what God we worship, if any God at all. We decide what we speak and with whom we associate. We decide what we're going to do with our lives. And sometimes, it's unpopular. And sometimes the laws try to regulate that in ways that are unjust. And we're all for that human spirit and letting it soar and letting the individual decide for themselves. And, I think ultimately that is why that map is filled with people who I just haven't been able to get to all of them and tell them this, right? Because if they heard that this is what we're all about, they would be like, I could get with that program.
You've only had 24 years, to be fair. It's going to take a lot of time.
That's why it's an institution that's got endless amounts of years. I run out of gas. It's the nature is going to make me run out of gas.
So speaking of your frailty or mortality, to be clear, you're not frail at all. You seem very robust.
Got a new hip. That was the worst part.
I knew there was something about you. You had a little kick in your swagger.
I had to cut it out because the old one was not holding up.
Okay, so hopefully the hip's going to last for another 24 years. But you've been doing this work a long time. You say that the work is in many ways soul-giving, that you have a lot of energy for it, and yet this is an incredibly demanding job. How do you think about when it will be time to pass the torch, and also your legacy at that moment?
This was a great organization when I got here. It's a great organization when I'm here. It will be a great organization when I'm gone, right? That's part of what my job has been, to build it. I believe in institutions that are energetic and vibrant and have resources and have the right people and have the right staying power. And then I also think that those institutions are bigger than any one person. It's not the cult of the one personality. And I've always been very clear that this is a great privilege and a great honor. And I don't own this organization. This is a rental car. My job is not to drive it into a ditch and to turn it over in great shape to the person who's going to drive it after me.
If you crash it, I know a good lawyer.
Not going to crash it. Not going to crash it. But I think it's also important to kind of prepare the organization for new ideas and new leaders. I came in, I saw things that I thought were pretty apparent to me that needed to change. And that's because, fresh eyes allow you to see things anew. And I think that will come with a new leader at some point. I think right now, it's good that I'm here. And then when it's time for a new person, I think I have enough people around me who will tell me it's a good time for a switch. And so I think that will be a moment, a good moment for the organization. I think the best days of the ACLU are always ahead of it. I think the best leaders of the organization are always in front of us. I'm not one to kind of lionize or romanticize the days of old. We learn from the past and we build to a better future. And I think the best programs we've been able to put in place are one that are consciously trying to build the next generation of leaders. And you take a long haul.
How do you think your generation has let down or not provided the next generation of leaders what they need to be successful? Like, what is missing in the dialogue, in the resources, in the investment in that cohort?
Yeah. That's maybe a little bit of why I'm so focus on trying to help the next generation of leaders. And it's not just at the ACLU. I also take quite seriously my responsibility to other leaders of other organizations, because this is not the Hunger Games. This is really a larger ecosystem of effective, talented people will benefit the causes I care about. And so I spend a lot of time with other folks who are not ACLU affiliated because I care about it. And I think we have fucked it up. I mean, my generation hasn't. I mean, how can you turn over this political environment and say, oh, it's pretty good, huh?
Good luck.
Good luck, And, we've got to take some serious kind of stock about how did this happen on our watch? How did a moment where you thought you could make real progress now has us fighting for every aspect of our legacy, whether it's a commitment to civil rights, whether it's a commitment to free speech, whether it's a commitment to individual autonomy or the functioning of a vibrant, independent civil society. That was all up for grabs. So how could we look at that pile of receipts and say, this was good? No. And I think part of what I'm hoping is that we'll be able to take it apart and understand where we went wrong. And I think not being willing to engage different individuals, different groups, different communities in an honest dialogue about what this means and what this matters and why it matters. I think, if anything, the ability for my organization to get outside of itself and constantly find a way to make a commitment to people who are differently inclined on our issues, that we have to find a way to engage them. If we're only talking to ourselves, we end up in this type of environment where we become more and more insular and more isolated. And, and also I think part of it is just knowing not to prescribe the next generation. They're going to figure it out. They're going to say, okay, thanks a lot. You left me an organization with resources and with a legacy and with a staff presence, with a multi-issue agenda, with millions of people who are committed to the agenda. But they're going to figure out a new way forward, and not to be overly prescriptive, and to be excited by the fact that there are new things to try and new ways of engaging it. And let's go there. Let me watch. Let me clap. Let me encourage. The best days are ahead of us. I know it seems so hard for people to imagine in this moment, but good days are ahead of us. If good people of conscience just keep trying, it's a matter of when, not if.
Imagine you could work your way into the TikTok feed of every young leader in this country. What would you say to them?
I don't know. I don't have TikTok. I'm not on any social media.
Okay, imagine you have a short clip that is sandwiched between...
Do I have to dance?
Animal videos and weird dance moves. And you have a minute platform to speak to every young leader in the country. What would you say?
I would tell them that it's working for what you believe in really matters. And yeah, there are hard days ahead, and there have been many hard days I've had. But for them, if they're working on something that really matters to them, it will go like a blink of an eye, and you'll always have a spring to your step. Even
with that new hip?
Oh, especially with the new hip. Are you kidding? You should see me now. I'm a bionic man now.
Anthony Romero, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.